The Bulls versus the Bears. Get in the game. www.tackletrading.com.
Every week in the market, I try to indicate what's going to drive the market on a weekly basis. I try to prepare for that week like a good coach of a football team. I like to game plan that week in the market. And a few things I like to look at that kind of drives market behavior on a weekly basis is, number one, I like to look at the indexes. What's technically what is happening to the indexes. I like to look at economically what's going to drive the market this week, geopolitical situations, and then obviously also in terms of company reports and whatnot, such as earnings reports. Well, let's first take a look technically at the major market indexes. And we're looking at daily charts here. On a daily basis, what you're seeing in the market is the overall trends of the market have been slowing. We have been talking about that in a variety of different segments. Let me erase my pivot points there. So remove studies, pivots, we can see a little clearer picture of it. So when you look at the resistance points in the marketplaces, you have these resistance and these resistance, and so you're starting to see slowing momentum in the markets on the daily basis. And importantly, you broke support levels on the daily basis down here. Now what the market is kind of trying to do here, it's retracing back into resistance, and it'll be interesting to see if it can get on top of that 1280, where I identify 1280, 1285, 1290 in that range as a support level, with an overhead resistance level right there at about 210. So technically you're in a slight little bearish downtrend short term because you broke that support level and you're retracing back into resistance right here. So I expect a little bit of a whipsaw effect this week, little up, little down in the markets this week from a technical analysis perspective. If you're looking at the NASDAQ here, you're seeing something very similar. It broke these levels of support at 4475, not as hard as the S&P did. And then you have the Dow Jones right here, which once again broke these levels of support there and there, so coming all the way down to 16,700 before retracing back up. I see overall weakness, technically speaking, from the major market indexes. And it would not surprise me to see the major markets sell off to a certain extent, but honestly, anybody who's been around this market for the better part of the last 6 months, nothing would shock us out there right now. Technically speaking, a little bit of downward pressure. Whipsaw effect is certainly in place this week. And for those of you who do not know what the whipsaw effect is, it's gap up, sell down. It's gap down, buy up. Everything is kind of just going radical right now, technically speaking. The second thing I like to look at is from an economic analysis perspective, and I'm going to pull up a website called forexfactory.com. And so let's put that down into the box so everybody can see it here. And let's extend it, and I'm going to go to the calendar here this week. And in the calendar here this week, we only have two major events from an economic report standpoint. You have the FOMC meeting minutes and the unemployment claims. The unemployment claims is something we see every single week. Okay, it's a major economic report, but it's like been there, done that. We get it 52 times a year. It's not something we concern ourselves with too much. The FOMC meeting minutes is one of the big dogs of the economic reports, and what that report tells us is it basically gives us an insight to what the Federal Central Bank is doing from an economic perspective, from a dollar perspective, from a monetary policy perspective, from an interest rate perspective. So that is certainly going to be a major event on Wednesday. However, with only one big time economic report this week, I don't really see economics playing a large role in the market this week. And then you got also from a geopolitical situation, and from a geopolitical situation, I mean, when was the last time we have been dealing with just so much news out there? Now we're dealing with the Ebola situation that is stateside now. It's been a massive problem for 2 months, but all of a sudden it comes stateside, and we start to focus on it a little bit. You're also dealing with it from what's going on with the protest in China. You're dealing with the war in Syria, in Iraq, in ISIS. You're dealing with still the unrest in the European markets. status. You're dealing with, which is, by the way, going into recessionary status. You also are dealing with it from a Ukrainian and a Russian situation, which is kind of taking a back seat to some of these other information, these other news that are coming out right now. And Noah Davidson wrote a newsletter on the correlation between the bond market and the stock market in the flight to safety. And I'd strongly encourage everybody to review that, because of these geopolitical situations, that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing a flight to safety. You're seeing movements from the stock market into the bond market. You're seeing movements from aggressive sectors in the stock market, such as, technology, as you can see right there, and as you can see industrials that has been really weak recently, and as you can see in the energy market that has been really bearish recently. When you're seeing these aggressive sectors start to rotate and turn down, and when we look at, like, for example, healthcare has been fairly strong recently. When you're seeing, consumer staples that have been fairly strong, when you're seeing, that's like food-based companies, and when you're seeing like utilities be, having a little bit of an uptick, although I'm still very neutral on utilities. And then lastly, financial market. Financials has been in an uptrend, still in an uptrend. So when you're looking at the defensive sectors and they're doing really well, well, maybe not really well, but better off than the aggressive sectors, that's part of the flight to safety. The marketplace is taking a defensive position because there's so much news out there. There's so much whipsaw out there. There's so many concerns out there in the marketplace, and you're starting to see that flight to safety because of the geopolitical situations. And then you also have earnings, and I think that's what's going to be the news this week. Even though with only Alcoa traditionally is the start of earnings season. It starts on Wednesday night. You're going to see Alcoa report its third quarter earnings, and that's the traditional start of earnings season because that is the first Dow component to report earnings. And Alcoa is significant because we're going to start focusing on earnings over the course of the next 4 weeks, and that's going to dominate news headlines out there. This week in the market, expect the whipsaw, expect some up and down, and expect geopolitical and earnings-based news to dominate the headlines. Matt Justice for Tackle Trading. Check us out on the website.
Get in the game. www.tackletrading.com